All right, I joined. Hopefully, a few of you will join me as well. Hi, welcome. All right, I think I got this going. I'm going to wait a little bit to see if a few others join, but it is 5 o'clock. So I'll go ahead and start by welcoming you guys. My name is Jessica Sawicki. I am a sleep consultant. I'm a certified sleep consultant. What that means is I've been trained and certified to work one-on-one with parents and their sleep issues, focusing on kids ages 0 to 6 years old. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep, try to kind of go over, here we go. Just waiting for Maureen to join me. Hi.
I kind of want to get off. I like you doing it just by yourself.
Okay.
Is that
That's,
okay? I'm
yeah,
like
that's totally
watching you
fine.
and you're so pretty. I just want to watch you. Okay? I'm
I
going to
put on
watch
makeup
you.
for you. Okay, no problem.
If I need to come in, I'll come in, but I'll pose questions for you too.
Okay, perfect. And I can see it, so that's okay, not a problem.
Oh, I love watching you. Okay, thanks. Okay, get me off of this.
I don't know how to get you off of it. That's the problem. Okay, there you go. Bye. All right. So as I was saying, I'm a trained and certified sleep consultant. I work with kids 0 to 6 on their sleep issues. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep, just like a little bit of background about sleep. I'm going to talk a little bit about the newborn sleep and then how to set up healthy sleep habits. And then a little bit about sleep training if we get to that. But a little bit about sleep. We all know it's very essential. It's very important for all of us, both our kids and as adults as well. When we sleep, especially our kids, they're working on a few things. They're working on their health, so their immune system. They're working on their memory, so storage and retention, remembering everything that they've learned throughout the day and processing that. And they're really working on their growth hormones as well. So they're secreting that growth hormone when they're sleeping. So when they're sleeping, our kids are working on their growth, secreting the growth hormones, keeping healthy, and their memory storage and retention. A lot of studies have shown that lack of sleep for both kids and adults can cause a lot of issues, right? So health issues, weight issues, learning disabilities, mental health issues. So sleep is really important across the board, not only for our kids, but as adults as well. When we're sleeping, our kids and I are, well, when we're going through the sleep cycles, we're going through REM and non-REM, so light sleep and deep sleep. So just a little bit about the science. We're cycling through these light sleeps and deep sleep waves. Our kids are doing that too. And when we're going from one sleep cycle to the next, we're going through partial arousals and awakenings. We're waking up a little bit and then we're going back to sleep. We're waking up a little bit and we're going back to sleep. With our kids, what happens is they're waking up, but a lot of times they need help in going back to sleep. Now, when we talk about a sleep trained child, which we'll talk about later, this child knows how to put themselves to sleep and then know how to put themselves back to sleep in the middle of the night. So they're connecting the sleep cycles both at bedtime and in the middle of the night. Sleep will vary a lot those first couple of years for our kids. Our newborn sleep is a child's newborn sleep is very different than a 2, 3, 4-year old. How much sleep they need is also it changes a lot those first couple of years. How long they can be awake for, how long they need to sleep at night versus the day. So it really changes a lot, especially that first year to 2 years. So I'm just going to go over a little bit about what the newborn sleep looks like and then a little bit further on. Of course, for those of us who are joining us, welcome. If you guys have any questions along the way, just write it. I can see it, and I'll answer those questions. A little bit about our newborn sleep. So newborn sleep, I could say it's kind of very inconsistent and sometimes not existent. We have this newborn baby who needs to sleep a lot, but their sleep isn't really scheduled. It's really not on a modified, nap schedule or sleeping through the night. So those first 3, 4, 5 months, it is expected to not have a routine or a schedule. It is expected to have the inconsistencies in the sleep. It is expected to have one day sleeping great and one day not. Our newborns can't connect those sleep cycles on their own. They need the help. Our newborns cannot sleep long sleep cycles. So a newborn, the longest sleep cycle they can do, or the longest stretch they can do, is about 2 to 3 hours. That's very short if they're waking up every 2 to 3 hours at night. Once they're 9, 10 months old, they're able to sleep 11 to 12 hours. But those first 3 or 4 months, they're really waking up a lot because they can't actually connect the sleep cycles, and they should not be sleeping 8, 10, 12 hours at night. They're waking up a lot. Those frequent wake ups are natural. They're signaling a need. They need to wake up to feed. They need to wake up to regulate their breathing. They even want that one-on-one connection with the adult, with the parent. So the wake ups are normal. The lack of sleep, as far as a parent goes through those first few months, it's a lot. It's hard on a parent. But what I tell parents is, expect the unexpected those first few months. It is normal. Now, what do you do when there's no, regular schedule? How do we handle this newborn lack of sleep per se? A few things. One is to kind of know that it's going to be unexpected, or, the schedule won't be really set. But two is to go in there knowing that there's no bad habits. So I always tell all my parents and all my clients, those first 3 or 4 months, you can do, and you're supposed to do, anything to and for your child to get them to sleep. So you can rock them, you can hold them, you can feed them to sleep, you can bounce them. You're supposed to do all of those things because they don't know how to self-soothe. So really do whatever you can to get them to fall asleep. There are no bad habits. Those bad habits really happen later, and we'll talk about that. 6, 7, 8, 9 months. First 3, 4, 5 months, you're supposed to, and please go ahead and do anything. So there are no bad habits. Do whatever you got to do. The sleep will be really inconsistent. Know that your child is not expected, your newborn is not expected to sleep through the night. The longest stretch they can do is about 2 to 3 hours. They do need a lot of sleep though. They do need a total of 16 hours in a 24-hour period. So they do need a lot of sleep, but it's not like 8 hours at night and 8 hours during the day and they'll be straight and they're going to be on the schedule. No, the schedule really happens closer to 5, 6, 7 months. At that point, our child is now out of the newborn stage. They're alert and awake more. They can be awake longer. And they're starting to secrete and produce melatonin, which is that calming, soothing hormone that really helps them to go to sleep. So really, the first 4 months, do whatever you got to do. The sleep will be really inconsistent. They cannot physiologically sleep long stretches. Will it happen every so often? Yes, but it's not consistent. And then after about 5, 6, 7 months, they can sleep better. Yes, someone writes the 4-month sleep regression is going to happen. That is absolutely true. Most babies will go through a 4-month regression. The sleep regression, the 4-month sleep regression, is really about a few things happening. One is developmentally, a lot of babies will start rolling over. And so that new milestone can affect sleep, which we'll talk about after, but the rolling over can affect the sleep. So developmentally, they're starting to roll over. They're also more alert and awake at this point. So that can affect the sleep. They're also starting to secrete and produce melatonin, which is that calming hormone that I spoke about. So they're going through physiological changes. They're going through hormonal changes. They're going through developmental changes. So there's a very big sleep regression at 4 months. I usually tell my clients after 4 months, after that 4-month regression, you can do sleep training. Again, we'll talk about that after. The earliest I suggest the sleep training is 19 weeks. So anything after 19 weeks is okay. Anything before 19 weeks is not suggested. But let's talk about how to set those healthy sleep habits coming out of the newborn stage and really moving forward. What can you do to set up those healthy sleep habits? So first in 4 months, I'm going to go over 10 things. First and foremost is you want to rule out medical conditions. So medical conditions can cause sleep issues. I'm talking about like reflux, colic, but I'm also talking about apnea, asthma, things like that can really affect your child's sleep. And so you really want to rule out any medical issues as far as if there's something that is causing the sleep issues. Um, two is no bad habits. So like I said before, when you're newborn, those first 3 or 4 months, there are no bad habits. You can do anything you have to do to find that soothing mechanism. Now, a few things that I see that people are asking, so I'm going to answer your questions in 1 second. Something that you can do to help soothe your child, especially the newborn age, is something called the 5 S's. So Dr. Harvey Karp talks about the 5 S's. The first one is sucking. So your newborn sucking on the pacifier, on the nipple, on the bottle, that sucking sensation really is a soothing mechanism. 2 is shushing. Shh, 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 shh. That noise of the shushing really calms them down. Side holding, so holding your baby on their side facing out is really also beneficial for the baby. That pressure on their belly and on their chest can really calm them down. Swing. So putting them in a swing, in like a carrier or a swing or something that moves them back and forth really helps. Swaddle. So having them swaddled in their with their arms in, and having their arms like this close to their chest is a good soothing mechanism for your child. Sucking, shushing, side holding, swaddle, and swing. Sorry. So swing is the movement as well that can really help the child calm them down. And really what the 5 S's are mimicking the womb, right? So our babies inside the room, they're tight, they're snuggly, they're moving, right? Because we're moving them, bouncing them around all day. The shushing noise is like mimicking the noise of the inside of the womb. So you really want to just mimic the womb, and that really helps soothe the child. 2 questions that I got just to answer you. Why at 19 weeks? The study showed actually at 19 weeks is when they're starting to secrete and produce the melatonin, and when they're capable of learning how to put themselves to sleep, how to self-soothe. Anything prior to that, the studies don't 100% show that they're able to. There's some babies that might be able to do it, but it's really not suggested. Most babies can do it after 19 weeks. And then someone else asked, what are some signs of sleep apnea? So sleep apnea, what it is it's the airway closing. And so what happens is our kids or adults, a lot of adults are finding out that they have it now. They're sleeping, their airway closes, they wake up and they wakes them up, and they fall asleep, the airway closes, they have a reflex, they wake up. So this in and out of sleep causes a lot of wake ups, clearly, because they're catching their breath. Signs of apnea is 1, really loud snoring. 2 is mouth breathing. 3 is restless sleeping. And 4 is really sweaty, like sweating and like hot in the middle of the night. Those are 4 common symptoms or signs of apnea. Really, like what you could do if you feel that your child or your partner has this, is going to the pediatrician or the ENT to check their adenoids and their tonsils. If they're really enlarged, that can be a sign of it as well. And then you would follow up with an ENT. Hopefully that answers your question. So going back to the 10 healthy sleep habits, 1, rule out medical conditions. 2 is there's no bad habits the first 3 or 4 months. Find whatever, soothes. Use Dr. Karp's 5 S's that I just spoke about. Number 3, back to sleep and tummy to play. So this is really, really important. You always, always, always want to put your baby on their back to fall asleep. And on tummy time is only during awake time. Now, a lot of parents will say, but what happens if my baby flips over in the middle of the night and wants to sleep on their belly with their tushy up in the air? Great. That is allowed once your child is over 4 months, and also once your child starts rolling over both ways. So until your child will know how to do it, they probably won't want to do it. So it's really important to always put your child on their back to sleep. And then during the day, when it's awake time, when they're not feeding, when they're just kind of awake and hanging out, do tummy time. That tummy time is really important for them to help developmentally learn how to push up and then go like this with their head and be able to roll back over in the middle of the night for sleep. So back to sleep and tummy to play. Again, once they prefer to sleep on their belly and they're old enough and they can roll over, absolutely, that's totally fine. Number four is set up a sleep space. So you really want to set up some sort of sleep space for your child to sleep in. And studies really show that they should be sleeping in the same space every single day and night. It's about routine and about habit. And really, the child will start associating sleep with their location. Now, where should their sleep space be? So first off, your room versus their own room. I'm going to say that that's a very big personal choice. I think that, it depends on your sleep situation. Do you have one bedroom? Do you have more than one bedroom? Do you have other kids? But also, again, going back to that mental state is, do you feel comfortable having your child sleeping in another room, or do you want your newborn sleeping in your room? And I think that's a personal, decision to make. Now, what does the AAP recommend? The AAP recently changed their rules as far as how long they should be sleeping in the room. They should be sleeping in the room for 1 year. So before it used to be 6 months, now it's 1 year. Now this is what this means is, if you are breastfeeding your child in the middle of the night and you're up in the middle of the night, they want you to have your child in their room, in their own sleep space, so that you're not going back and forth. They were finding a lot of, parents or moms breastfeeding in the middle of the living room, in the middle, like on the floor. And, there were situations that were not, really healthy. So if you're going to be up in the middle of the night with your child breastfeeding, especially that first year, they do suggest having the baby in the parent's room. If you're not going to be up all night breastfeeding or feeding your child in the middle of the night, and once your child is sleeping through the night, is it okay to have your child in a different room? Absolutely. So again, it's a personal choice, but I think that, you also have to see if you're going to be up in the middle of the night or not feeding. And again, the AAP does recommend having them in your room that first year if you're going to be up in the middle of the night feeding. Now, where should your child sleep? Your child should be sleeping in a flat surface, right? So whether that's a bassinet, a crib, a co-sleeper, as long as it's flat and bare, there shouldn't be anything there. No pillows, no props, nothing like that. Pillows are allowed for those of you with the older kids. Pillows are allowed after 3 years old. Under 3, they're not suggested. Over 2, they're okay. Under 2, no pillows. Over 2, they're okay. Usually suggested 3 and later. No blankets. No blankets in the crib under the age of 1. And really nothing is allowed in the crib under the age of 1. The AAP is really strongly adamant about that, as far as nothing in the crib under the age of 1. So no pillows, no blankets for the ones under the age of 1, for the newborn, especially. For the newborns, flat surface, bare crib. If you're going to be using the co-sleeper, it is suggested to have it attached to the bed, right? So the co-sleeping, that's a whole other discussion. If you're going to be doing co-sleeping, please follow the guidelines and safety. That's my number one thing. Or just attach a co-sleeper to the mattress. So sleep space, a room, a bed, a crib, a bassinet. The room should be dark. The darker, the better. Your child is not scared of the dark. That really happens once they're 3, 2.5, 3 years old. Under the age of 2, they're not scared of the dark. So really try to keep the room dark. The less light, the less noise, the less stimulation, the better. So dark at night. During the day for naps, I do suggest closing the shades. Again, as your child gets older, 5, 6, 7 months, the shades are open. It's really distracting. Doesn't have to be pitch black, but dark enough. Quiet. The room should be quiet. Music and lullaby is okay during the day, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But as far as sleep time, you really want to turn off the music. White noise machines are great. They're really helpful for those loud rooms or houses or dogs or noisy street. The noise machine really drowns out all that exterior noise. It should be on a medium to low setting, not so close to their ears, and somewhere in the room. So definitely noise machines are helpful. So their own sleep space, it should be bare, right? Nothing inside. Dark, white noise machine. Temperature. So temperature, they say the ideal temperature is anywhere between 68 and 72. I say that every house is different. I actually have my house at 76. But that's because the little one's room is really cold. So I find that you have to find out, what works for your child and in that room. Just bear in mind that they're not under the covers with that body heat of your partner that you do. So, they're bare in their crib. So kind of keep that in mind as far as the temperature. And then the last thing is inviting to sleep, right? You want to have their little sleep space, whether it's your room in the corner or their room, just, cozy, inviting. We want to go to sleep here. It's dark, it's quiet. There's no like iPads and TVs, it's not loud. It's enjoyable, and it kind of is inviting to sleep. So that's setting up the sleep space. Number 5. Setting up a consistent and flexible schedule. So consistent and flexible schedule. So what do I mean? Like I said in the beginning, the first 4 months, there's not going to be really a consistency. What I usually say is those first few months for a newborn, the only schedule you're going to have, and I say that loosely, is when did your child last feed and when did your child last wake up? So when did they last feed? I find that very, also personal, but if your child feeds every 2 hours and you need to wake them up, then I would do that during the day. Wake your child to feed during the day so that they can get those feeds. And then when do they last wake up? So our newborns have a really small wake window. Our newborns, the first 3 or 4 months, their wake window is about an hour, give or take. They should not be up for more than that. They get overstimulated and overtired. So really just make sure that, okay, my child woke up, let's say it's 5:20. Okay, by 6:20, she needs to be in the crib for her nap. But when did she last feed? And so that's what you're going to go about during the day to kind of give you some sort of schedule and some sort of like ability to go throughout the day. Again, knowing that it has to be flexible, right? So today my child is 3 weeks and she's going through a growth spurt. So today she needs to feed every hour. And so knowing that you're going to have to be a little bit flexible those first few months. Now, older, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, the consistency is really, really important. Our kids thrive on consistency and schedule and routine, right? In school, they have circle time, snack time, playtime. Same thing with the sleeping for our kids. Over 6 months, you really want to get them on a schedule. You really want to get them having napping and bedtime at the same time. Not to go into too many details, but your child needs to nap until about 3 or 4 years old. So for a 6-month-old, she needs 3 naps. She'll need 3 naps until she's 9 months old. At 9 months, she'll need 2 naps. And then she'll go down to 1 nap between 15 to 18 months. And then we'll stick on that nap until about 3 or 4 years old. And again, this day sleep is really important. And that bedtime is really important to kind of create that schedule and that routine, but also knowing the flexibility of every so often we might have to, change a little bit or move the nap over or the bedtime a little bit over. Distinguish day versus night. This is really important for those newborns as far as like, our babies, our newborns are born without a circadian rhythm. Nothing is really set. There's no schedule, like I said. So we need to create that for them. And so a lot of times babies will have their days and nights confused. So what does that look like? Sleeping all day and up all night. And so what we really want to do is we want to kind of reverse that, right? And so what can we do? So during the day, I strongly suggest exposing them to sunlight, even if it means I can't go out. So with my firstborn, we were in New York and he was born in November and it was freezing and I was stuck inside all day. I couldn't even go outside. I was also a panic first-time mom, so I wouldn't go outside in the winter. But what I would do is I would bring him to the window, right? So even that sunlight, that vitamin D, which is really important, but exposing them to sunlight, turning on the lights in the room, super important. Turning on some music, some background music, some lullaby during the day really helps them knowing, okay, it's daytime. The other part of it is waking your child to feed during the day so they get those feeds in during the day, and to help distinguish night. Now, at night, what do? You keep it really dark, really quiet. You do those feeds without really interacting them with too much. So you take them out, you feed them, you change them, you burp them, you try to put them back to sleep. So you really want to make sure that at night you keep it dark, you keep it quiet, you keep it simple, you do the feed as needed, and then try to get your child to go back to sleep during the day. Wake them up during the day for those feeds, expose them to the sunlight, put some music on. You're not going to keep them up all day to wire them either, but interact with them during the day so they can really help distinguish day versus night. And yes, it does happen. Not with all babies, but with some. And then you're really, you're up all night and it's exhausting. Okay, the next one, daytime sleep really will give you a good night's sleep. So what that means is you don't want to overstimulate your child too much in the day. You don't want to like, I mean, we're not doing that now because everything's closed, but we don't want to take them to the beach in a park all day, right? So a newborn out in the sunlight too much noise, too much, it will overstimulate them. And then at night, they'll have rough nights. So really calm days equals calm nights. Now, that does not mean do not go out of the house because as we all know, as new time moms and first time moms, we need to get out of the house. So definitely go out of this house. Again, the sunlight helps, the walks help, the car rides help, but try not to spend a whole day outside where all the naps are out and everything is kind of like all over the place. Too much stimulation for your child those first few months can cause really rough nights. And really also, the other part of it is as your child gets older, it's not about stimulation, but it's really about, okay, their daytime sleep really affects their night sleep. So the studies actually show that your child needs to sleep their good naps during the day, get that deep, deep sleep during the day in order to get that deep sleep at night. So during the day, if they're doing light sleep, so cat naps, 20, 30-minute naps all day, at night, they're going to wake up more frequently and do a lot of light sleep. So you really want to make sure that they get in that deep sleep during the day in order to get that deep sleep at night. Number 7 is routine. I'm all about routine. So not schedule, but routine. And routine would be right before going to sleep. So how do we help our child transition from playtime, awake time, park time to going to sleep? So that bedtime routine, helping them get from, playtime to nap time or playtime to bedtime is really important. The routine that I like to do is called the 4 Bs. You can start that really early, 1 month, 2 months. Obviously, it's a little bit different than it would be for your 6, 7, 8 year old. But the 4 Bs is really what I like to do. So the first one would be bath. So bath, washcloth bath for the newborns, regular bath, shower for the olders. Um, for the younger ones, it would be bottle or breast. So after bath, bottle or breast. So a feed, then book, then bed. Bath, bottle or breast, book, bed. So what that means is that, every night they have their dinner, or for the newborns not, but now it's time to go to sleep. We're going to do a little bit of bath, maybe the infant massage, calm them down. Then we do the feed, bottle or breast, and then they're done with their feed. Most newborns will fall asleep, and that is fine. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Feed them to sleep, cuddle them, fine. You finish the feed, you probably won't be able to get that book in part. That's okay. Then you do the bed part. But as your child gets older, 6, 7, 8 months, the routine will stay the same, but now you're going to add the book. So after the bed, the bottle or the breast or their cup of milk, you're going to unlatch, finish the bottle, and now we're going to read a book. So that book is really helpful, that one-on-one with your child. Verbal, right? We're looking at the books, red, orange, yellow, look at the choo-choo, 1, 2, 3, but it also separates the feeding and the sleeping. And so for those of us that continue with that feeding, sleeping association, we break it. So we have a 9-month-old who is still getting breastfed, fine, we unlatch, now we're gonna read a book together, we're gonna turn off the lights, and then we're gonna go to sleep. So it's really helpful to break that that nursing, feeding, sleeping association. And then, like I said, you can use that as they get older. So let's say my youngest is turning 2. So now what we do is we do it together. So she's drinking her milk and I say, oh, where's the ball? And she points to the ball. And where's the book? The card, there's a card, verbal, right? Beep, beep, ball. And now my 6-year-old or my 9 and 11-year-old, they're not sitting with me reading. Now they're reading their own books. So it's really a great routine that you can start as newborn and just kind of, fluctuate a little bit and change and adapt it as they get older, but really keep to the 4 Bs. So bath, bottle or breast, or when they're older, a cup of milk or no milk, book, and then bed. That book also really helps eliminate the screen time for the older kids. TV, iPad, things like that right before bed. You really don't want to have that screen really can cause other issues as far as falling asleep. So the book really helps kind of stop the screens, especially these days when screens are on all day. Okay, number 9 is practice drowsy but awake. So drowsy but awake is this really big thing about sleep training, and everyone talks about it, but what does it mean? So drowsy but awake is you want to put your child down awake, or drowsy, sorry, but awake. Now, when they're under 6 months, those first 3 or 4 months, chances are your child will go into the bed completely asleep, right? Completely drowsy, completely asleep, fine. Once your child is sleep trainable, right, a little bit older, 6, 7, 8 months, they should not be entering in their crib awake. They should be entering, asleep. They should be entering awake. And so if they are drowsy, they need to be awake. Okay, so that is really important. So if you see them falling asleep, that's too drowsy. So I always say on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being asleep, they should not be more than a number 6 or 7. So they should be awake, alert, good night, mommy, I love you, and going into the crib. Now, if they are awake, they don't need to be drowsy. It just means if they are drowsy, they do need to be a little bit more awake. Now, you can practice this as early as 6, 7, 8 weeks. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. You can practice it, but does not mean you're going to fully do it, and does not mean you're going to leave your child awake in their crib. What it means is, okay, good night, I love you. You do the feed, you do the burping, you swaddle, and now she's completely awake. But you know she needs to go to sleep. So what can you do? You can swaddle her, burp her, she's done with her feed, give her the pacifier, put her down in the crib, and see what happens. Now, if she starts crying, pick her up, hold her, rock her, shush her, pat her, like help her. Don't let her cry herself to sleep, but you can't put her down semi-awake, drowsy, and see if she can put herself to sleep, obviously with all the crutches, with the pacifier, with the swaddle, and assist her if she needs it. But if she doesn't, then she can try to do it on her own with all those crutches. And that's a good way to start 6, 7, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and you start practicing it for yourself. So when your child is old enough, you'll feel confident of putting them down completely awake. And then the last thing, number 10, is my most important thing is receive and ask help. Okay, especially those first 3 or 4 months, any help. So that means from, can you please give me a cup of water because I'm so thirsty, I've been breastfeeding? Or can you please make me a meal because I'm so hungry? Or can you please hold a baby so I can go take a shower? Or everything from, from that to a lactation consulting, a feeding specialist, a GI, or even, again, most importantly, a specialist, a mental health therapist, because, there's going to be a lot of emotions, a lot of hormones, a lot of change, especially if this is your first child. I mean, it's also your second, third, or fourth child. You're always going to have a change. So those first 4 months, I really strongly suggest, or any point really, find the help you need. And again, everything from make me, a meal to find me the specialist I need for whatever it is, whether it's for my baby or I. So those are the 10 things that I strongly suggest. Rule out medical conditions. There's no bad habits those first few months. Find what works. Back to sleep, tummy to play, set up a sleep space, super important. Consistent and flexible schedule, especially as they get older. Help distinguish day versus night. Daytime sleep really will help that night sleep. Set up a routine, the 4 B's. Practice drowsy but awake, and get help. So those are the 10 things that I really, really strongly suggest as far as how to set up those healthy sleep habits. Now, let's talk a little bit about sleep training. Unless anyone has questions, I've been looking at your comments. You're welcome. I'm glad that was all helpful. If anyone has any questions, please write and I can see them. But I'm going to go over a little bit about sleep training. So sleep training, what is this about, right? So everyone talks about sleep training. So sleep training is putting down your child down awake so that they put themselves to sleep. And so in the middle of the night, they put themselves back to sleep. So this goes back to those sleep cycles that I was talking about, right? So they need to be able to connect those sleep cycles, light to deep, deep to light in the middle of the night. But if they're not putting themselves to sleep at bedtime, they cannot put themselves back to sleep in the middle of the night. So that is really what the sleep training is about. Putting them down awake, having them put themselves to sleep so they put themselves back to sleep. Now, a lot of parents are like, but what if my child needs a feed at night? Totally fine. You can still do sleep training. Sleep training is not about removing feeds. Sleep training is about having them learn how to put themselves to sleep, how to self-soothe, and so they can do it in the middle of the night. So if you need to feed your child in the middle of the night because she's underweight or because you wanted to keep a feed, then by all means, go ahead and do it, but you're still going to put your child down awake. Again, both a personal experience just to explain to you is, my youngest was underweight. So when I did the sleep training at 5 months, I kept 2 feeds, right? So you need to understand that if you need to keep the feed, that is okay. You can still do sleep training. And yes, sleep training is so difficult, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about it to kind of ease all your anxieties. So if you need to keep a feed, you can, right? What is sleep training about? Putting your child down awake and having them put themselves to sleep and back to sleep. Another thing about sleep training is they need to be age appropriate. So this goes back to 19 weeks or older. Okay, that's the youngest that I start. But usually, what I tell moms is, you know, keep 6 months should be your ideal target. So if your child is 6 months and older, that's when you should kind of be like, okay, my child is still not sleeping through the night. I'm still rocking them to sleep. They start becoming habits and they start forming really bad habits. I should stop. Anything under 6 months, you don't have to. You can. Anything over 6 months, I suggest. At what age do you not recommend night feeding? If normal weight and growing and healthy, anything after 6 months, most babies do not need feeds. Anything under 6 months, most will need at 5 months, 0 to 2 is the average amount of feeds they need, right? Depending on the baby. By 6 months, 0 feeds. And again, some moms will keep it till 7, 8 months. I would say by 9 months, definitely no middle of the night feeds. Okay, so age appropriate, like I said, 6 months and older. Anything under 6 months, just make sure your child is 19 weeks or older. This whole myth of 12 weeks, 12 hours by 12 weeks, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't love that book. I find it very restrictive for a 12-week-old baby to sleep through the night 12 hours and only do 4 feeds. So for those of you who have read that book or a friend have told you, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think it works for every newborn, and I find that it gives false hopes for a lot of moms thinking that their child at 12 weeks can sleep 12 hours. As far as, okay, so the age appropriate, right? Teaching them how to put themselves to sleep and back to sleep, being able to keep feeds in the middle of the night is important. Now, the other part of sleep training is what are your issues and what are your goals? Okay, so my issue is my baby is nursed to sleep all night and I wake up 5 times a night and I nurse her to sleep. Okay, my issue is I rock my child to sleep at night, and at bedtime. Or my child sleeps great at night, but not during the day. So what are your issues? And then what are your goals? So if your goal is, I want to keep 1 feed, but I want to stop nursing her to sleep and rocking her to sleep, then that's your goal. So you need to figure out what your issues are and what your goals are, right? That's super important in order to create a plan. Now, what method, right? So how do I carry out this plan, right? This goes back to sleep training is very difficult. It is difficult, but know that you have options, okay? So this is my other big thing. You do not have to do cry it out, okay? So a lot of moms call me and they're like, I don't want to do cry it out. I don't want to leave my child to cry by themselves for 12 hours. You don't have to. You really don't have to. I didn't, and I don't with my clients unless they really are adamant. But the cry it out of putting your child in their crib, awake, closing the door, not walking in until the following morning is the true definition of cry it out, and you do not have to do that. There are other options. You can do Ferber, let's say in and out checks. You can even be in the room and stay there with your child and provide the support. So there are options. So know that. So issues, goals, and options, and know that there's different methods, and know that you can keep feeds. As far as the crying, so a lot of parents ask me, what do I do about the crying? It's, up all night, or I'm scared about the crying. So here's the thing. The crying will happen because that's how your child, will tell you that they're upset, right? Especially the toddlers will talk to you, right? Or the older 3, 4-year-olds will say, Mommy, I don't want this, or Mommy, come back. But the babies will cry. It is normal. But if you're doing it correctly, the crying decreases. The amount of time it takes for them to fall asleep decreases. They get used to it. They learn the habit. And that's what you need to know, that if there's no medical issues, it's all behavioral. So you're teaching them a new habit. They will learn that new habit, and they will learn how to put themselves to sleep and back to sleep. So really, just approach it the way that, there's no medical issues. It's all behavioral, and you can address it. And know that if you are consistent and you follow through, you will see the plan. You will see the success, sorry. I know There is a very big stigma around sleep training, and that's why, you know, I love what I do, because I'm very passionate about sleeping. But it's also because a lot of people feel that like sleep training is very black and white. Okay, 6 months, close the door, cry it out, get rid of feeds. Or, okay, your child is breastfeeding, they're not sleeping through the night. That is not true. Both professionally and personally, I can tell you, your breastfed child can sleep through the night. You do not have to do cry it out. You can keep the feeds. There are different ways to do it if you approach it the right way. Any other questions about sleep training before I go into my last part about things that can affect sleep? No, thumbs up. Okay, so the last thing is I want to talk about things that can affect sleep. So why won't my child sleep through the night? So again, going back to the newborn, we're not, you know, the newborns will not sleep through the night. This is really mostly for the 6 months and older. So why won't my child sleep through the night? First and foremost, just to tackle onto what we just spoke about, is bad habits, right? So if your child is used to a habit, used to a sleep crutch, right, then they will need that in the middle of the night. So if you are rocking your child to sleep, holding your child to sleep, and doing all of that, and I'm talking about the 6 months and older, they will need that in the middle of the night. So you cannot put your child asleep in their crib and then at 3 in the morning say, okay, cry it out, figure it out. That is not consistent, right? They're going to need that habit. So one is my child woke up in the middle of the night because they're used to something, a sleep crutch or a habit that I need to do. Two is going back to those medical issues, right? So both medical and random illnesses, right? So medical being apnea, reflux, things like that. And sickness being my child has the flu, God forbid, a virus or a croup or stuff like that. When your child is sick, they will be up at night. Do whatever you have to do. I have held my kids to sleep in the middle of the night when they've been up, when they're sick. That is normal and that is okay. We want to provide with the love and support. Obviously, once they're not sick, you need to stop, right? So medical issues is number two. Number three is developmental. So your child will reach a lot of developmental milestones those first 2 months, 2 years, sorry. So rolling over is the first one. Then they learn how to sit up, crawl, stand, walk, talk, all of that. And all of those are milestones that will affect sleep for two reasons. One is they do a lot of light sleep as they're processing this information. And two is they get stuck, right? So we have a child, you know, who is learning how to sit up. So they sit and they actually don't know how to lay back down. So they're sitting at 3 in the morning crying because they don't know how to lay back down. And so that, you know, would make sense, right? So with the milestones, you really want to practice a lot during the day as your child is learning. They're learning how to sit, they're learning how to stand, practice, go up and down, you know, help them, push them. But when it comes to night sleep, you really want to let them do that on their own. But that can affect sleep. Those developmental leaps will affect sleep. The other thing that affects sleep is separation anxiety peaks. So our children will go through separation anxiety peaks a lot those first 2 years. So the first one is around 6 to 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, and then 2 years old. And what happens at these peaks is your child is trying to understand object permanence. So object permanence being my mommy exists even though I don't see her, right? So why do we play peekaboo? We go like this, cuckoo, right? We're teaching our child that even though you can hear me and you can see me, you know, you can hear me, you cannot see me, but you can hear me. I still exist and here I am. And now I'm not here and now I am. And that's object permanence. So it's really a silly game that we play with our kids, but it's super important developmentally for them to understand the object permanence. And so what happens in the separation anxiety peak at these points is, good night, I love you. You're going to put your child to sleep. You're going to walk out and she's going to start screaming and crying. Why are you leaving me here? Are you coming back? And so you'll see them clingy during the day. They don't want you to leave them alone. They don't want to play on their own. They want to be with you. And so at night or nap time, you're going to want to put them down and they're not going to want to be put down. That is normal. I strongly suggest keeping to what you're doing. Still put them down awake. Try not to go into bad habits. Does that mean you need to go back into the room and do your little check? It's okay, sweetie, I'm here. And then leave and come back and forth. Does that mean I need to stay in your room for a few days just to kind of calm you down? Maybe, but I'm not going to go and rock you to sleep, right? I'll be here to provide you support, but I don't need to go back all the way. So separation anxiety peak. Another thing that affects sleep is teething. Now, here's the thing with teething. Teething is not an excuse that we want to use every single day the first 2 years of our lives, right? Their lives, because they're not teething every single day. Every single night is not a teething thing. That's one. Two is the teething part that hurts the most is when the gum is swollen and the gum is opening. So when it's opening up a hole for the tooth to come out, that's the most painful part. Once the tooth is out, the pain is done. Now, another thing is some kids will go through teething phases and they're totally fine. But if they're not fine during the day, they're cranky, they have diarrhea, they have fever, they're clingy, they're not eating well, then at night you will see wake ups. That is normal. When they're teething, try to just kind of, stick to it still put them down awake, maybe a little bit of Tylenol, a little bit of like pain relief, but then at night try to stick to it again. Like try not to start rocking them and hold them. If they need that for a night or two because they're in so much pain, that's fine. But then once that tooth is out and you see the white part out, there's no more pain and the pain is done. And then they're fine until the next tooth comes out. So again, try to like know your child and know that if they're teething, respond to them. But once that tooth is out, we're not using that as an excuse. The next thing that affects sleep is travel. We're not really traveling now, but just for the future's sake, when we are traveling, it can affect sleep. We're in a different environment. We're in a new sleep space. We're in the hotel. We're somewhere else. They might cry those first few days. They don't know where they are. Or we're traveling, but we're not doing naps. We're out in New York City walking around all day and we're going to Disney, And so the naps will be affected. And so that means their schedule will be affected. So their sleep will be affected. So when you travel, obviously try to put them down awake, try to keep to their schedule and routine. Again, a little bit of flexibility is okay, but know that sleep might be a little bit affected while you're traveling, and it should go back to normal once you get back home. And then the last thing to affect sleep is their schedule, both naps and awake windows. So again, knowing that your child needs to nap, it's crucial because if they're not napping well during the day, they're not going to sleep well at night. So you really want to make sure your child is napping until about 3 or 4 years old. Again, going back to just a little bit about how much sleep they need. At 6 months, they need 3 naps, a total of about 3 to 3.5 hours. At 9 months, they need 2 naps, a total of about 3 hours. Anywhere between 15 to 18 months, they go down to 1 nap. They need about 2.5 hours. And then by the time they're 3 or 4 years old, they'll drop the nap and they'll be able to stay up all day with no nap. And they really need these naps because that's how long they can be awake. So what happens is our 6-month-old cannot be awake for more than 2 hours, 2.5 hours at a time. And so they need those naps. They need 3 naps a day. If we keep them up longer than those 2 hours, they start getting overtired and stimulated, and then they're producing cortisol instead of melatonin. And that cortisol is really a stress hormone and will cause overtiredness. So really, you want to make sure that they're napping the amount of naps that they need during the day so that they're not overtired and that they get the rest they need. So those are the 7 things that affect sleep. I went over a lot. I don't know if you guys have any other questions about newborn, toddlers, older ages, anything. I'd be happy to answer you any questions that you have. I don't know if Maureen, you got any questions before that, but I don't know if any of you guys have toddlers. I can talk about toddlers. Oh, thank you. But if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I'm here. Yes, of course. How to find me? Yes. Okay, so for those of you who missed, my name is Jessica. I am a gentle sleep coach. I'm a certified sleep consultant. My business name is called LuliSleep, Luli Sleep. Yes, LuliSleep Consulting. I have a Facebook page. I have an Instagram page. I have a website, all of that. And so find me there. Send me a text. Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me. I do initial calls for free. So if you have any questions, that first call is always free. And then after that, once you decide to work together, we do the consultation and all that support. So reach out, LuliSleep, in email, anything like that. I do virtual. I've done virtual before that. So I've been doing this for 7 years now. And over the 7 years, I've worked with people outside of the States, in China, in Mexico, in Colombia, like Brazil. So I've always done virtual. Obviously now everything is virtual. So I am doing consultations through, Skype or FaceTime. And then all the support that I give you as you're doing the sleep training, because again, sleep training is hard. So I'm giving you that constant support through emails, through text, through phone calls. So I'm there along the way while you're doing the sleep training. Oh, thank you, Naomi. So are you. Um, so the two questions, should you wake a 2-month-old from a nap after a certain amount of time? So I would wake your 2-month-old if it's time to feed, definitely. So you don't want to miss too much of a time of the feed. So if your child feeds every 3 hours and she's sleeping, you can let her sleep 3.5 hours, like past the feeding time, 3.5 hours, but definitely wake her up for that feed. Um, Usually naps during the day don't go more than 2 hours, give or take. But if they're a little bit longer here and there, that's fine. But you should wake her up or him up after for a feed. And then as far as older kids, so I suggest keeping your child in their crib until they're at least 3. So under 3, I don't like to move your child or suggest moving your child into a bed. Under 3, they're not developmentally, they don't understand to stay in the bed. Now, if your child starts jumping out of the crib and it starts becoming a safety issue, because that happened to my second son who jumped out of the crib at 20 months, then yes, you put them in a bed for safety reasons. But if they are in a crib, I would suggest you keeping them in the crib until they're at least 3. After 3, it's okay. And there's no studies that show their IQ level. So if you keep your child until they're 4, so my third son was in a crib until he was 4, it's totally fine. If your child is sleeping great, fine. Now, if they're in a bed, this is where you need to start, setting up those limits and boundaries, because they do come out. They're going to want to come into your bed. They're going to want to not stay in their bed. And so that's really a whole other ball game, as far as setting the limits and the boundaries and explaining them that they have to stay in their bed until it's daytime. A lot of kids will come out and come into their bed, into their parents' bed. Some parents are okay with it, and that's fine. But if you're not okay with it, then you need to walk your child back. You need to take them back to their bed. They need to stay in their bed. A lot of parents will be like, whatever, it's 5 in the morning, so it's almost morning time. That can also open the window to more wake up. So 5 is like 6, but 5 for them can be 4 or 3 in the morning, and they start waking up earlier and earlier. So you really want to make sure that if you don't want your child in your bed in the middle of the night, you definitely don't want them in their bed at 5 in the morning. Yes, I work with kids up until the age of 6 years old. So 0 to 6 is really the framework and the certification that I have for anything after 6. You start looking at other issues that are far beyond, anxiety levels or other things that, will require more of a specialist. So anywhere between 0 to 6, newborn, transitioning to a bed, going from co-sleeping to not, setting the limits and the boundaries. So yes, if your 7-year-old is still coming into your bed at 3, again, 5 is like 4, 4 is like 3, they don't know. So for your 7-year-old, I would really put a talk clock. So those behavioral talk clocks, like the Hatch and things like that, I mean, because I don't know if your 7-year-old can tell time yet. I'm not sure. But anyways, the idea that they can't tell time, right? So they don't know 4 or 5. But if you have those talk clocks, which I loved, it's like a color or an image, and you teach your child, okay, look at the light. If the light is blue, it's still nighttime. When the light turns green, you can come out. And so when the light turns green, he's allowed to come out and start his day. Now you would set the light turning green at an appropriate time, right? So anything after 6 is appropriate, anything before 6 is not. So you would put the light for green. Now, if he wakes up before 6, okay, you can stay in the room and, you can rest. You can, close your eyes. You can read a book. You can do whatever you got to do. Anything after 6 is okay. Now, here's the other part for your 7-year-old and for the ones who have 4 or 5-year-olds. Okay, at 6 in the morning, he comes out and I turn on the TV and I turn on the iPad and sweet. Yeah, that's the other thing we don't want to do. So I don't like screen times right before bed. I also don't like it the first thing in the morning, because your child will wake up to get that screen right away. Screen time can be after 8, after breakfast, after we've done something, but try not to have that screen right away at 6 in the morning, because they will wake up for it. So I really would suggest that. As far as moving into a bed for the younger ones, if they don't understand to stay in the room, so you can use a clock. But I also like a gate. So some parents kind of like look at me weird with the gate. I'm going to tell you why the gate I like. For the younger ones who don't, so not for your 7-year-old, but for your like 2-year-old or your 3-year-old who don't understand stay in the bed and they come out. For safety reasons, you don't want your 3-year-old roaming the streets or roaming the house at 3 in the morning, right? I actually have heard of a child who's roamed the streets at 5 in the morning, right? So first, I'm not saying that's going to happen to you, but for safety reasons, the gate will enclose or keep your child in their room, right? For safety reasons. Now, it also helps you so you don't have to close the door because I don't like closing the door on our kids either. 3, 4 year olds, you're not going to say goodnight, close the door and lock them in their room because that's a lot of anxiety. So for the 3 year olds, I'm scared. I want the door open. That's fine. You can have the door open, but the gate is there to protect you, sweetie, so that you don't come out. It also kind of makes the room like a crib like feeling. So it encloses them and makes them like a crib like. So it's for safety and crib. So, and like that crib like feeling. So the gate, the clock, the setting up the rules and boundaries are really important for those older ones. Okay, unless you guys have more questions, which I'm happy to answer, I want to thank Maureen and Naomi for having me here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for all of us who joined and for all your questions. I hope I answered them correctly and or you got all the information you needed. I did answer them correctly. That you got all the information that you needed. Again, my name is Jessica. You can find me at LuliSleep. Reach out, ask me anything, sleep, anything related to your child 0 to 6 years old. Oh, great. It'll be on YouTube. Awesome. Send me the link so I can share that as well. So thank you, everyone. Oh, yes, I do too. Well, thank you guys and have a good day. Stay safe. Okay, I'm going to sign off. Bye. Hearts to you too. Thank you.